Okay, let's get going. Just check someone's here. Actually, I could just, oh yes, there you are. Treasurer's here. I thought I'd check before I asked him to speak. Thank you all for coming. And hopefully this will be a chance to introduce you to a lot of the work that's been going on the board over the last 6 months or so, and hopefully will be into the future. And for us to hear back from you, A, what you think about that, but B, also to share some experiences that you might have. Now, those of you who attended the last of these meetings might recall that instead of taking questions verbally as we went, if you have any questions that arise from what you're hearing, it would be better if you put them in chat, and then we'll look at chat and scroll through that and answer questions at an appropriate time, rather than keep stop-starting and people unmuting themselves and interrupting. So if you bear that in mind, if and when any points arise, I would be grateful. Okay, well, the first item on the agenda, as it so often is money. So we turn to Mr. Moneybags, the Treasurer, Jerry. Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. When I spoke to you this time last year, you were looking at a very worried treasurer, looking at the edge of a cliff, and it wasn't very pretty at all. But a huge amount of work and hard work and difficult decisions, including redundancies, have gone on across the EBU, particularly from Gordon and everybody involved in competitions and setting up stuff online. So although the first 3 quarters were not quite as bad, but still pretty bad last year, as I was forecasting, we did manage towards the end of Q3 to stabilize things, but we were still, as we hit Christmas, heavily loss-making. However, Q4 was, by which I mean January to March of this year, was simply amazing for income, and particularly the month of March. In those dark winter and spring days, people clearly played bridge online. Now we still have got the accountants needing to crawl over things and how much we can put into one year and not the other year. But a little bit to my surprise, I think we might come in with a small surplus for the year 2021. Now that's a bit of a cheat before we go any further, because we had over £100,000 worth of government assistance by the end, and I think we were quite good at extracting every penny we could. And £100,000 is a lot of money, and it was over 100,000, not under. We had, for instance, £25,000 worth of grant. We had a lot of furlough money. We had some very welcome donations, including from counties. We had no international expenses of any materiality to think about. And even the wonderful World Bridge Federation and European Bridge Federation reduced their fees to us. So essentially we had about a £200,000 windfall, without which we would have been indeed very heavily loss-making, but we weren't. So that basically needs us, if you look at carrying this year forward to last year forward to this year, given we don't intend to increase prices if we can avoid it, we've got to find another £200,000 worth of income or some more expenditure cuts in order to break even this year. And I suspect we won't do that. As a minor aside, some of you who've been in the correspondence will know our insurance costs have also gone up rather considerably, and that will hit us. And we will not be getting any reductions from the European Bridge Federation or the World Bridge Federation. We're having to pay our full fees despite having argued that we shouldn't. I'm afraid that won't happen this year. And having said we had a wonderful March, April's actually been pretty poor. I don't know, and I'd be interested to hear whether that's the same in counties when I hear from you. It's about 75% of last year, so not good. And May up to May the 23rd, which is the latest number I have, is also about the same level. So we seem to have around Easter got a step down, maybe as the sun's come out, although there's been rain here, I don't know with you, but it's not been very sunny. But maybe as the longer days have happened and golf has returned and things, people are playing less online. So I know you wouldn't expect to hear anything else from a treasurer, but we're going to have to continue to bear down on costs, but also work really hard. And I think reopening is obviously critical here at getting some of that income back to eat into that sort of £200,000 gap. What I'm sort of got in my mind is that we should seek to break even across the 2 years. So use the small surplus in 2021 to cover some losses in 21-22 as the target. I suspect we won't quite make that, but it won't be a disastrous shortfall of that. But your guess is as good as mine about what income will be like, say next winter. Will Q4 repeat itself? What will happen? But I'll finish where I started. Gosh, we're in a better position than I thought we would be. Gosh, we're in a better position than I thought we would be last summer and when I spoke to you last summer. And that's thanks to a lot of hard work by everybody right across the Bridge family. So thank you very much indeed. Very interested to hear what the position is in counties financially, and obviously take any questions on what I've just said. I don't know how you want to do that, Ian.
I think it would be best, right? Well, Alan Mould, can you ask, please, out loud what you're saying?
Sure. I was just interested, you were predicting that on your best guess at the moment, there'll be a small loss in 21-22 income and expenditure. I was just wondering if you felt that would be a one-off, or where that's just going to repeat in 22, 23, 20.
Yeah, I get the question. You cut out, but I think I've got the question. I really would hesitate to guess. I just don't know what's going to happen to income. Membership numbers seem to be holding up. Will people play? Online is more profitable than face-to-face bridge, as I'm sure counties will echo. It's just more, it produces a bigger surplus. Of course, your lots, the international group, will start spending money again, I suspect. So that will be a problem.
And if you let us.
Well, I might well let you spend a little bit more than I intended 3 months ago.
That's not going to get anybody very far.
That's not going to get you excited, but because Q4 was so good. I think the key probably is what will happen in Q4 next year. Will winter bring people to play bridge online again, and therefore we'll get a significant good last quarter? And of course, good last quarters are very dangerous, because if they don't happen, you're in all sorts of trouble if they don't materialize. So to answer your question, I suspect we will need price increases next year. By next year, I mean 22-23. We will have to do something about staff pay, which is an area we've held back on. So that will have to be, that will need some attention. And one or two other things where we've stopped investment will need attention. You know, we don't provide any grants anymore, and I would love to restart that, for instance. So I'm being deliberately and a little bit evasive, like a good politician.
Right, Norman Innes, I think you're up next. Norman Innes from Kent.
Can somebody say how the counties are doing when they respond?
Yeah, no, I've just put it up. Not much to add really. We've just about broken even. I mean, I think the drop down that you're saying in April, not only were the days getting lighter, but of course lockdown started to get eased as well. Yeah. So people were desperate to get out and about. I mean, our big success story has been the 9 high games every weekend have been phenomenal. 17, 20 odd tables every week. Just so pleased with that, with the people that have organised it. one of whom is here, Paul. Well done. So yeah, we're fairly healthy, but then we had no ongoing costs. You know, we used Tunbridge Wells, which is a separate entity for our county thing, so we had no ongoing costs there.
Yeah. I think if I pick up David's question in the chat, Ian.
Yes, go ahead.
I think I understand it without him needing saying it, because it's a good question. People play more frequently online than they do face to face because it's less of a faff when you get in the habit. So the issue is, if they start playing face to face, you know, how much will their online, will it disappear completely, and will they just go back to old habits, or will it be half and half? You know, what will happen? I don't know. I really don't know. I'm worried about those April numbers, but treasurers are here to worry, and that's what I'm doing. I don't know, and I wouldn't like to put a thing on it. And we've lost a lot of people. What's going to happen to them? You know, a lot of people have disappeared from site completely. David, did you want to come back? You had your hand up, I see.
Yes, it's only to say that, yes, there is going to be some loss, but a lot of people are not playing online bridge at all. So any income that we derive when they go face to face will be additional income.
Yeah, I agree.
Let me just say that Peter Cox of the Australian Bridge Federation has done a lot of statistical work on this, because they've actually gone back earlier than us. And you can see that if you go to the BAMSA website, he's actually got a video there with loads of statistical information, which will certainly help us to look at, to model what is going to happen.
That's helpful. Thank you, David.
Jerry asked for information from counties. What I can tell you from Manchester is, firstly, that from quite a big online presence, Manchester County has almost no online presence now, simply because the games have slowly collapsed. So we're practically not running any. However, part of that has been taken up by the clubs, which is fine. So our clubs are doing a lot more than they used to. We also are in the process of surveying our clubs about what they intend to do after June the 21st. And I've had about half of the clubs return information to me so far. And the interesting aspect from it, which I think will be interesting to you in particular, Jerry, is without exception, all the clubs are saying, yes, they will run some face-to-face session when they feel it safe, but they also intend to continue with an online presence. So I think we can say that the world has changed forever. And even those people who, you know, and those clubs who were very, very antagonistic towards online bridge, that has now changed. And I've heard back, interestingly, from one of the clubs who say that they will only run online sessions in the winter. You know, all their members are elderly, they don't want to get in a car on a, you know, a really wet November night or something. So they are only going to run online sessions in the winter, and they'll run some face-to-face in the summer. So I think what we are going to see is that when things open up, there'll still be a significant online presence, which might well be good for you, Jerry, because as you say, people just play more online because it's just easier.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's just, you've got sort of these 4 or 5 variables, some pluses, some minuses, and it's the quantum of each, which makes such a difference that maybe the figures from Australia will help me understand, but I don't know. I think what we've got to do is continue, and I hope you'll all agree with this, even though it might be accused of crying wolf and all those sorts of things. We've got to continue to be slightly cautious, because we've got to keep the EBU going. We are, as I think I announced to the AGM, going to have a full review of direction of travel, by which I mean all these parameters, early autumn, and we'll make some decisions then around what we can do, and maybe we'll have a clearer view by then. Maybe we won't, because we won't know what winter will bring, and winter will be, I think, will be better than summer.
Okay, well, we've seen a fair few comments crop up. Most of them, we can go back and look at those later.
Yeah.
Most of them just sort of reports of how various counties are doing. Haven't seen any the word disastrous at all. I did see that Oxfordshire aren't actually making any money. They're living off their reserves, which is not good. And there was a comment about membership, about numbers dropping before the pandemic, which of course is true. That is something that we will be coming to at some point.
We're not actually living off our reserves. We have reserves and we don't need to use them up, but we don't need to generate an income.
Oh, right. Sorry, I read it too quickly. Fair enough. All right. Well, we've got all those comments. We'll have a look at those later. But now, Peter Clinch of Sussex would like to say something not about...
I put my hand up. I think you can see there's a hand there. So I've been handed up for a while. I was, we do have the Treasurer of Sussex here. I did want to make one comment though, because Jerry said something about how, and somebody else said green pointed events have pulled in a lot of money. To be honest, green pointed events, I find, haven't pulled in a huge amount of money for Sussex compared with when we were holding them face to face. They're a good contributor to the EBU because of the high amount that's being charged for per player. But I'm slightly concerned on the other side that we've been able to run green pointed events without a loss at a much more favorable rate or price to players than the EBU runs its green pointed events. So for example, I think the average county one-day green point costs about £15 or even less.
I think it might be, yeah.
And then the average EBU one-day event, I say reluctantly admitting knowing how much the seniors Swiss pairs cost, that's £36 per head. I'm a little concerned that the people are able to get their green points, as it were, at different rates, and that might impact the EBU unfavorably if things continue online. I'm not volunteering to put the charges up, but I think there's a hidden minefield there.
Do you want to comment on that, Gordon?
I just say that we're well aware of that, and the pricing at the moment has been done very much with a particular situation in mind that we don't expect to carry forward, and we are having discussions about precisely what we should charge for online things that we continue to run. We also have to be aware, though, that if we reduce the price of our online things too much, then they will also undermine the price of our live events. So those things are all interrelated. So all I'm saying is we don't have the answers, but you can be sure that we're not expecting just to carry on as we are doing at the moment. We're going to be looking at it. We are already looking into it.
Thank you.
But that, of course, does also affect my numbers as well. And Gordon and I have a little battle from time to time about this issue. Gordon, I assure you, is all on the side of the player and is trying to push prices down. And your treasurer is desperately trying to maintain the contribution because he's looking at that £200,000 gap for this year. So it's a good, healthy tension, I would say, wouldn't you, Gordon?
Good. Okay. Well, if nobody's got anything of any particular moment to add, then perhaps we should move on. As I say, we've got your comments banked. We can have a look at those later. And you can always get in touch with us anyway. We'll move on to the membership survey. Now, the membership survey, I was astonished, not the membership survey, the county chairs survey that was sent out. I was astonished at the response. Almost everybody sent back a form, which for a questionnaire, I think is almost unprecedented. So I put my name next to this on the agenda. It's rather fraudulently because I did absolutely nothing other than approve other people to go and do it. Then when the survey turned up, I said, well, that's very good. Well done. And told them to get on with presenting it here. So the three people who've done the work on it are board members Gail Webb, who was elected as club representative for a period of 3 years earlier this year, and invaluable she has proved. Kath Fox, who also joined us recently, having done quite a lot of work on our IT group with Kiat Huang, who's still on it, who's here, a former board member, and Kay Preddy, another recent addition to the board. So the three new ladies have put us all to shame, and will continue to do so throughout this meeting. And I think that Kay is going to lead off and take you through the meeting, the survey results. Is that right, Kay?
That's correct. Thanks very much, Ian. I'm just going to try and share my screen. I haven't done this, so I hope this is going to work. So give me a minute, please. Does that work?
No.
No, let's try this.
Ah, that's more like it. Yep.
Does that still work?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you. So, firstly, I'd like to thank everybody for responding to the survey. We've got quite a good response, which you'll see shortly. So I'm going to start by just talking about the responses and county membership, then run through the 5 sections of the survey, and then try to deduce what we may be able to conclude from that survey. I thought we might, when you see a green screen, that's an opportunity for any comments to be fed back or questions. But so when you see a green screen, please, we'll take a break and see if there are any comments. So let me start by just talking about the responses. Firstly, I should say we got 35 counties of 39. And I should say that the responses weren't official. So we didn't go to the county and ask for an official response. We went to the county chairs and says, could you please yourself or get somebody else to answer these questions? So it's not an official survey. Although some responses were received too late to be included in the presentation, we've had a look through them and we have concluded that what they're saying is consistent with those that have earlier responded. So that's fine. The survey, well, 39 counties represent 680 affiliated clubs and about 56,000 members. So again, thank you for your responses, and to note that this is an excellent response and provides us all with a very good understanding of the views countrywide. I'm going to move forward. So we started by asking about club affiliation, what you thought were the numbers of clubs affiliated in your county. A few things to say about that. Firstly, there are some differences between counties, which are due to boundary variation, so they cause some anomalies. Also, clubs have shifted alliance over time, and that also causes some more anomalies. And history has driven some of the differences in the affiliation. So bear those things in mind as we talk through these numbers. Key things about affiliation, though, is about overall, you think about 50% of clubs are affiliated and therefore 50% are not. What is interesting, though, is you get quite a lot of variation between counties. So you can see in Berks and Bucks, 85% of clubs are thought to be affiliated, whereas in Merseyside, it's only 25%. So quite a lot of variation between different counties. It's also interesting looking at membership by county. This isn't part of the survey, but it was information that we have, and it's interesting. So we think average numbers per county is 1,435. Average members per club is about 90. There's a wide variety in the different sizes of counties. That's not a surprise because the population is very diverse. So the smallest county is the Isle of Man and the largest county is Surrey. What is perhaps more interesting is the population to membership ratio. And I think Ron got these numbers together. So thanks very much, Ron. So what we see a great variation here. So from as low as 4 per 10,000 population to as high as 32 per 10,000 population. Channel Islands being exceptionally high. So there's a lot of variation there. And we also see quite a lot of variation in the recent changes to membership. So we see growth in Oxfordshire, as an example, quite high, to other counties which have seen recent decreases in membership numbers. So 2 key things I bring from that set of information. Only 50% of clubs are affiliated, and there are very different variations between the counties, both in the affiliation and the member to population ratios. So before I go on to the next set, which is expectations to the future, is there anything anybody would like to add, ask? In which case, I'll move forward.
I think Kathy Talbot just put a comment in the chat.
Sorry, say that again.
Kathy Talbot just put a comment in the chat if she wants
Yeah,
to.
I think it speaks for itself, doesn't it? They've gained because clubs reaffiliated, which is always good news.
I think one of the conclusions we'll draw actually is that the pandemic has led to some clubs reaffiliating. We'll see that shortly, but as the EBU have been and others have been very helpful to get clubs online, it has encouraged some non-affiliated clubs to become affiliated, is our belief. So we talk about what you expect going forward. And this is talking about the number of members you expect in your counties. Do you expect them to increase or decrease in the next 3 years? And surprisingly, well, to me and some other members of the board, about half of you, half the counties, thought that the membership would stay about the same. And nearly half thought that they would decrease, with the 2 counties, I think Kent and Suffolk, expecting growth. So I was surprised that actually so many thought that the numbers would remain the same. But that's what you're telling us. And then we asked a series of questions about the way bridge is played, or has been played in the recent history. So some very key conclusions from you is that nearly all of you think online is here to stay, which I think is endorsed by some of the comments we've heard already today. Nearly all of you think there's an urgent need to recruit new bridge players. And a lot of you think there's a requirement to get more volunteers into the game. But interestingly, not everybody. A lot of people think teacher recruitment is, we need a drive to get more teachers. But again, that's not universal, that's only 40%. Some interesting other facts is that you think players mostly like to play against their own standard. This is helping us think in terms of the way we structure tournaments. We think some enjoy playing against better players, but not all. And most of you think there is a demand for inter-county player at all levels. So that today there's quite a lot at the upper levels, but there isn't much at the lower levels, but there is a demand. And we're seeing most people want to play at weekday afternoons or evenings. So before I go on to the what we found out about the pandemic, is there anything further anybody would like to add, or any questions? In which case I shall go on. So the pandemic, what did we see? We asked you how you thought clubs performed in the pandemic with respect to teaching and recruitment. And you're seeing there, I think, quite a lot. There's no activity, quite a lot. There's very little activity, and with a few retaining activity when we were pre-COVID, and a very small number actually increasing activity. But on the whole, decreased activity in terms of teaching and in terms of recruitment. How did clubs perform in the pandemic? And I think it's mixed. There's nearly always a decrease, but what we're seeing is about, what you're saying to us is about 50%. I think overall it's hard to get some numbers, but about 50% of affiliated clubs are playing online in 2021 compared to 2020 February. Interesting, we're seeing, and I think we mentioned this before, even though there are fewer clubs, the number of players, although gone down, it's not gone down nearly as much as the number of clubs. partially the bigger clubs will be online, but I think also a lot of players are playing where they can rather than in the clubs which are no longer offering bridge at the moment. But then we ask you about what do you see about the future in terms of clubs reopening? And I think there's a fair sort of 25% in the green and the red, where you expect over 20% of bridge clubs to not reopen at the end of this year, which is quite a lot. So a significant number of our clubs you anticipate not reopening at the end of this year. We have some statistics about number of sessions and numbers of players, and we've compared April 2019 with April 2021, and we see total sessions gone down a bit. The number of players have gone down quite reasonably, which is interesting. So before I move on, is there anything anybody would like to add, question? We'll move on then. So we asked you to share some of the strategies that you have used in the past that have been successful to recruit new learners. We see a variety of things here, but they broke down into 3 types. Online, what you can do offline, what you can do online, and using word of mouth. I think these are wonderful ideas. And what we want to do, and you'll see this more later today, is to work with you all on what has been successful, enabling that to be known amongst all of us, working on what is successful and working together to make that to bring all of those successful strategies in use across the country. And you'll see later our ideas on how we might facilitate that happening. Similarly, we asked you about what has been successful in teaching, and you set out some different ideas for how to teach beginners and how to teach improvers. And these are great ideas, and again we want to build on these and work with you all to facilitate the best strategies being further development and being spread throughout the country so that we can all learn and use what works well. I'll come back to that later. Anything on that? In which case I'll move on. So we asked you what you valued in the EBU. And before I go into some of the detail, an interesting observation was that we did a similar survey about 2 years ago. And at that point, we didn't get nearly such a comprehensive and interesting feedback. And I think one of the conclusions we bring from that is actually the pandemic has really helped underline the value that the EBU can and does bring. But let's go through some of the detail. So you largely split your responses into 5 groups. The fact that the EBU is a national body and therefore can do things nationally, provides a national face of bridge, it's respected governing body, it's the guardian of bridge's reputation, it handles conduct issues, and sadly there've been far too many of those recently, and it runs bridge for England. It provides competitions, and this you value, across different players. It has the master point system, NGS, it has green points, and it manages the calendar. It promotes the game, it facilitates for EBID teaching, and it provides a set of services to members, clubs and counties. So that was very helpful and good feedback. We also asked you how the EBU has supported you and clubs in the pandemic, and your feedback was perhaps unsurprisingly quite positive, very positive. And I think a few things to note. The key things was the blue moving play to online was greatly appreciated. I think that's every county. Providing advice for the future, keeping members engaged in the green, and holding Zoom meetings. I think that's for counties was very much appreciated by you during the pandemic and a few other things as well. But those were the main things that you appreciated. And I think we should recognise that this was a time when, as we've talked, there'd been redundancies in the EBU and reduced revenues, but still the EBU were able to provide this. And I think we should all extend a huge thanks to Jonathan and his team for helping the clubs and the counties move online. So once again, I'd like to emphasise those thanks. You also ask you to set out some suggestions, which I've listed the main ones here. Again, I wasn't able to list the more recent submissions. Here is a selection, and before we talk about some of them, I'll just note that I've only been on the board for a couple of months or so, and during my time I've heard many of these same things talked about, which is a great thing. It means the EBU is in the main aware of the things that you're thinking about, the problems that you're having. Obviously more can be done. So let's just read through some of the things you said. There's an awful lot about increasing membership and teaching, things that should be done. So bold initiatives are required to recruit and teach new players. There are some great examples in the counties. More advertisements promoting the benefits of learning to play the game. More advertising and getting beginners interested. Working with juniors. More social media presence. Rebrand Bridge, an exciting online game for young people. There's a suggestion here we had a second level of club membership, which might help unaffiliated clubs to get on board. Teaching. It was obviously teaching is key to getting new people into the game. And again, a new strategy to get more players into the game. And then there were a set of things about competitions and playing, how to make this easier, which you came up with a number of suggestions, many of which, or if not all of which I know are being considered right now by a subset of the board, thinking about competitions and how we should develop them going forward. And then communication and approaches. And again, communication is a key thing that the EBU is thinking about, how it should improve. There was thought that from one county that EBU can be too formal and too bureaucratic. How can we address that? And some thoughts that maybe we can now move on to how to organise post-COVID, which is a good idea, and that we should continue and build on sharing of best practice. So those are the key things that we heard from you. And I'm emphasise again, I wasn't able to look at the last set of responses that we received. So before I move on, is there any further comments, thoughts on that? I assume nothing, I'll move on. So we also asked you to...
Sorry, Tim Warren just raised his hand, but I don't know if he had anything to say or if it was a mistake.
Just a comment. It's probably in fact on the previous section that you were talking about, Kay. You listed a whole range of different ways of reaching people to bring them in to become new players, which is great. I don't disagree with anything that you've got there. I have this feeling that actually it's ways of reaching people is not the issue. I think if we went out and reached loads of new people, we wouldn't have the teaching capacity to handle it. So it kind of feels to me that we need to put an aspect of the cart before the horse of advertising. I'm not trying to disagree with anything you're saying, just about sequencing it correctly.
Yep, absolutely agree. In fact,
if I may intersperse with something that some of you may have been around long enough to remember. We several years ago, an advertisement was run in the Telegraph. I think it was by EBED. It was, I think it was before Andy Marget's time as chairman. It was that long ago. It was an initiative, and it generated a reasonable amount of queries, but there was no way of coping with the queries. there was no mechanism in place, which is what Tim is talking about. In fact, somebody is at a meeting similar to this, either a county chairs meeting or a shareholders meeting, people were asking why we didn't repeat it. Well, we didn't repeat it because it wasn't worth the effort, because it didn't do anything for us. We have to have, as Tim says, the backup there.
Yeah,
quite agreeing with him there.
Can I add something here? I'm pretty new to being chair here, and so I'm still, and I'm sure it's going to continue a long time. I'm learning, having to learn a lot. It feels to me that the biggest capacity constraint on teaching is having the right kind of people to do it. We have a small number of teachers who put a fantastic amount of phenomenal amount of energy into gaining people and teaching them, but actually we could really do with a cloning machine of that right kind of person, and that's quite difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Agree. I think this is the conversation is more to do with marketing and how we go forward, which we'll come to shortly, and maybe expand the discussion then when we get to that point. Whereas this is what you're feeding back to us. But so I'll come back to this theme and what we need to do going forward, if I may, shortly. Oh, but thank you. So where were we? We were talking about clubs. So you listed some very successful clubs, and I'm sure these are great examples, and I'm sure there are others. The ones in red are just those which are the top 50 in terms of numbers of players. And what we want to do is to work with these and other successful clubs to understand why they're successful, and enable all the other clubs to understand why they're successful, and if they can, to use the same techniques. So that's the intention. So I want to say, well, what are the main conclusions? I think online is here to stay. People like it. It's going to stay. Therefore, we must think about how we're going to support it. We have to embrace the game and find the best ways to incorporate this format of the game and to help support counties and clubs and players. But I think we're also all concluding that the number of players has been decreasing over many years. It has decreased over the last year, and it looks like it will probably decrease in the next 3 years. And the net number of clubs is expected to significantly decrease because of the pandemic. So I think from your comments and what you're saying in the survey, we need a drive to get new players and new teachers. But as you say, we have to overcome the constraints that we have. This drive should be based on, we believe, collaboration. We think we should all work together, EBU, clubs, counties, learning from each other and having a collaborative drive to recruit and retain players for the game. I think, as we've heard from the treasurer, we need such a thing to enable the EBU to transform, and maybe the county as well, transform finances and allow the EBU to offer cheaper and better services at a lower cost and hopefully preserve the game in England. So lastly, just to talk about the people at Ian mentioned earlier, Gail Webb, who Gail, can you say something so everybody sees you? Are you there, Gail?
Hi there.
Ah.
I think quite a few people have met me, but I'm Gail Webb, and as Ian mentioned earlier, I've joined the board with a particular responsibility for clubs, and I've been honoured to work with Kath and Kay on this project. We're working together, and we're all very different people, but I think it's we've brought out quite a lot of interesting things here, and also Ron, who Kay will introduce you to in a moment. So, hi everybody.
Thanks, Gail. Kath is here also. I wonder, Kath, if you could say a couple of things to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kath. I've been on the board for a very, very short period of time. Before that, I was working with Keat on the working group for technology in the EBU. And yeah, it's been great working with Gail and Kay and Ron. And I think we've mixed well together. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath. And Ron, who I suspect all of you know already, but nevertheless, Ron, I wonder if you could just introduce yourself. Is Ron there? Ron's here? No. Ron, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks.
Yes, here.
Brilliant, thank you. So, sorry, Ron.
No, it wasn't Ron, it was me. I was just going to say this slide is going to come up at the end of the membership presentation as well. So you'll get a chance to hear exactly the same thing from everybody, which is something to look forward to. Sorry, Kay, you were going to say.
Lastly, I'd like to again thank the counties for responding for this to this survey, and to my colleagues for helping putting everything together. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Now, a lot of that will inform the discussion about membership, which is scheduled to take place later. Having heard the whole presentation, which is basically, as Kay has said, really a report of what you have said to us rather than what we're saying, has anybody got anything particular they'd like to ask about that? Richard Evans, please.
Thank you, Ian. Just one thought. I expect BBOs helped save a lot of us in the early months of the pandemic. And then latterly, some of us have embraced RealBridge as well. RealBridge seems to be very proactive in terms of introducing Andrew Robson for free for 4 lessons. Now they're doing David Bird. I wondered if there's any chance the EBU counties clubs can ask RealBridge if they are prepared to do something to help on teaching and recruiting, because theirs is the ideal platform for it.
Do you have something specific in mind that they should be doing other than just providing us with the platform that we can use to our advantage?
Yes, I do, Gordon. I mean, one of the key elements is making sure the right material is there for teaching. That would be number one. And number two, maybe they might have some ideas on appealing to new players so that they can learn. But I think possibly preparing the right kind of teaching material or adapting it so that it could be used on RealBridge. I really see that as the ideal platform where you've got video and you are actually talking live to potential students.
Thank you very much. Can I say something? Just wanted to say that we did initiate conversation with RealBridge. They're very early discussions, and exactly along these lines. And so I'm very keen, well, I'd be very keen to get other people's ideas on how it might work to take that discussion forward.
They seem to be a very proactive organisation.
Could I add something to what Richard is saying? The usage of teaching materials, well, there's already eBed's English Bridge School, and it could be a nice integration to be able to go on English Bridge School and to join a lesson and play on RealBridge integrated into that platform. So that would be something that would need obviously the cooperation of RealBridge. That could be something that that could be a win for both.
Yep. Nice.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think possibly people are waiting to see how the next but one item pans out. I had hoped that would last a bit longer because we're constrained as to when Andy and Lee Guy can do their brief eBed wave, because Lee Guy isn't available until about 2:15. So what I suggest we do, this is a bit unfair on Kay, but we move on to membership now. And at some point when Lee turns up, we have a brief break, introduce Andy and Lee, and then have a proper break and then restart. Are you okay with that, Kay? Okay. Can't hear you.
Did that work?
Yes. Ah, right. Okay.
Brilliant.
Off we go then.
Thank you. So this actually nicely follows on from the survey results. And again, I'd like to thank my colleagues, Ron, Gail and Kath, for the work in putting this together. So we've been thinking recently about what should be our marketing ambitions. And we're proposing our primary ambition to be increase the number of players who play the game of bridge in England. That's our primary ambition. The secondary ambitions being to ensure that the EBU is a respected brand, to increase the number of players who play under the umbrella of the EBU, to promote the game of bridge in England by ensuring its benefits are understood, and to support the volunteers at clubs and counties to help deliver the strategy. What I wanted to focus on today was the first of those, increasing the numbers of players who play the game of bridge in England, and preferably under the auspices or the umbrella of the EBU. So what do we do to support that primary ambition? I think we, the EBU, believe that a countrywide drive to get new players and new teachers is required, and that should be based on collaboration between us all, EBU, counties and clubs. We should work together. And the survey showed that most of you supported this view. However, we must achieve this within our financial constraints and any other constraints that we have. But the EBU doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't have a lot of money to spend on promoting the game. Just soon talk about history and the numbers of players. And it's difficult to get players, but many of you will remember the playing in the 70s and 80s when there were far more players playing tournament and playing bridge in this country. Estimates from that time suggest, well, I think we got this from a EBU magazine, that were about 80,000 tournament players at that time. Membership was much lower, but then membership was optional. You didn't have to be a member just to play. Gail provided evidence of Warminster, where she found only a small fraction of the people actually played were members of the EBU at that time. So it may not be indicative. When we look at more recent stats, we look 2010 to 2020, we see numbers relatively stable. We can look at that in a bit more detail in a minute. But Ron's done some analysis which suggests that that may be masking some underlying trends. So let's have a little look at that. So we see more recently, numbers grew a bit from 2011 to 2013 or so, but then they plateaued. This is membership. However, Ron's analysis shows a bit more. Ron's analysis showed that if you look on the right-hand side, look at the regular players, yes, they increased, but more recently, they are decreasing. And although the membership is stable, we think that is made up by some players who are playing very, very occasionally. And that is increasing. So although the membership looks stable, we think it's masking an actual decline. If I look more closely, I think we looked at this before. We looked at the last couple of years. This is really showing the statistics during the pandemic, where we've seen a decrease over the last year. And as we've said, that might continue given the pandemic and its effect on bridge players and bridge clubs. So now let's look at what the potential might be. Many of this is quite contentious and made up, but the overall message is the pandemic, the potential is big. So we have 57,000 members or so, some of which are very inactive. We have, as we've already talked about, 50% of bridge clubs are not affiliated. That immediately gives us access to players. There are a large number of occasional and social bridge players. It's difficult to know what those numbers are. I think Ron estimates them to be about 300,000. I think when I was young, and some other people were young, this number was set at about 1 million. I've no idea whether that number was right or whether it remains the same. Some evidence to support that number, however, is if you look at the States and you look at, they happen to know the relation between players who play in clubs and players who don't. And if you were to extrapolate that and use that in the UK, you'd get close to 1 million players. Whether they're the same as us, I don't know, but there is an argument to suggest that the number is quite large. And then there's a lot of people who don't know how to play the game, but probably could benefit. What that number is, I don't know, but it's large. So we think the potential is there. However, there are a number of factors that we need to take into account. Number one, we don't have funds. Two, we talked about teaching. Teaching is a constraint, bottleneck that we need to address. There are ways that we might address that. We've talked about some online teaching as an idea. To what extent can we make that work so that we can increase the teaching throughput? Ron will talk in a minute about some initiatives that have been recently being pursued in Yorkshire and how successful that is. And it is successful. Maybe we can repeat it elsewhere. How do we get more teachers? Are there any ideas that we have? We also can, now that we have online, we can make the game more accessible. Just as I think some of you are suggesting, we can perhaps use RealBridge or other platforms just to make it easy for people just to get in and start playing the game. Hopefully we can do that, and hopefully that will attract people into the game. We have the coffee lounge, which is now in place and is beginning to get some traction. Maybe we can promote that a lot more. How can we make clubs more accessible? And how do we make competitions more accessible to players? So those are all areas where we can, which we can explore to make the game more accessible. But we also suffer because we, the EBU, don't have good information. I think there is good information. I think it's get this confused. It's either the clubs or the counties, but EBU doesn't have particularly good information about members. And we certainly don't have good information about teachers. So we don't have good information. And I think we also have the challenge that as well as the opportunities online bring, it brings us a few challenges. I don't know what other people do, but I play half of my bridge online, which has nothing to do with the EBU in other events. I don't know if that's true with other people, but it does bring challenges. You can now play internationally quite easily. You can play in any country now quite easily online. It doesn't have to be with the EBU. We've also talked about volunteers. How do we increase our volunteer base? I think some of you are saying, well, we got enough. Some of you are saying we're not. And how do we best harness the talent of members that we have? There's a whole host of members which have got a load of talents, and some of them have time. So those are opportunities. And I should have added, and you're quite right, we've got logistics. So how do we make sure that even when we do attract people, not only do they have teachers, but they have an easy pass through, we have an easy process to get players in, attract players in, pass them on to the next stage of the game. All challenges. Thank you. So I'm now going to talk about our vision of the approach. So our vision is that this is collaborative, all of us together, working together in a consistent, holistic way, that we do so as much in a reusable way. We create things, we share them, we refine them, we reuse them. And we do this in the different structures that we have in the game. So where it makes sense that things are done nationally, they are done nationally. Where it makes sense they're done regionally, they're done regionally. And where it makes sense they're done locally, they're done locally. So the EBU can do things nationally, it can run nationwide campaigns, it can talk with press agencies that work across the country. It can talk with national partners such as chess or other organizations, national employers and other types of organizations. It can also create tools that can be reused. It already has a lot of tools. It can create more. So the idea is it has a library, it's a repository for tools that can either be used locally or can be repackaged to be used locally. So it could have the names of the county or the names of local clubs or the names of local teachers, which can be put into the leaflets that already exist. And obviously the EBU can work with other regions, maybe Commonwealth, maybe other ideas, but the things like that we reach externally, not just within the country. And similarly, things are done regionally where it makes sense to do regionally. So the counties can reach out to, they can have regional campaigns, talk to county-based companies and organizations, and similarly the club can do that. And we all work so that we understand what works, we refine those ideas, and we work together. So that's our vision of how it should work going forward. I'm going to talk a little bit about some more ideas. So what does the EBU already provide? So it provides things listed here, and it has services and areas on the web that provides things to members, clubs and counties. And one of the things that struck us was when we were thinking about what to provide, what tools and toolkits that we can provide to clubs and counties, we had a look at our own website, and Gail Webb, who's, forgive me Gail, you're a very experienced bridge administrator, actually was surprised by the richness of what existed already. So it's likely that if Gail wasn't aware of everything that existed, there'll be lots of other people that also are in that position, don't have a good understanding of what tools already exist. So therefore, there's going to be a lot of benefit in understanding what already exists, explaining that to people and communicating that to people, and then identifying what we can build. So let's talk about some ideas, and I'd stress here that these are ideas in development, and I'm sure there are lots more that we can and should build on. So with respect to the press, the EBU could maintain a library of articles that could be localized. In fact, we started to write some articles, and I'm sure there are others that can be used. So sort of very common articles which will be similar stories in different counties and different regions that we can write, and then we can just reuse, making them local where it makes sense to make them local. We could also have bridge columns that could be written and then could be tailored locally and used in local publications. The EBU should perhaps create relationships with national press agencies, which often, excuse me a minute, which often have relationships with local newspapers. So we establish those relationships and persuade them to have both columns and article, then that could be a role that the EBU could take. The countries and clubs, as I said, can then tailor the articles and get them published locally. We suggested that the EBU could maintain a set of white label leaflets, or that could be used and then could be adapted more and be used locally. There are contacts that we can have with organizations that will be able to contact people who will be attracted to play bridge. Retirees is an obvious example. The services, and I think we've already made contact with the services, and that has been It looks fruitful, so that could be good. Work-based contacts to other card players, to schools, so there's lots. There's golf clubs and organizations like that. And again, EBU can do that nationwide where it makes sense, and that can be done locally where it makes sense. Attracting non-affiliated clubs is obviously something we've talked about. We would like to provide a sort of a compelling argument to attract non-affiliated clubs, and we've talked about dual membership. Maybe that's something we could think about and how that might work. I have no idea, but maybe that's an idea. But once we have got that compelling argument, then we can hopefully get the message out locally. And as we've mentioned earlier, the EBU will be able to work more broadly, not just in the country, but outside the country maybe. And clubs and counties and the EBU can work together to build on and extend its existing toolkits, ensure that everybody knows of their existence, and refine them according to what is best required. So those are some ideas that we're developing, and I'm sure there are lots of others, and we'd be extremely keen to hear from you and build on those ideas. As we go through this though, communication is going to be key, and to just help kick that off and improve what we currently do, Gail Webb, Club Liaison, and Patrick Shields, County Liaison, are working with clubs and counties to find the best ways to communicate effectively. They've established a working group, they've had some meetings, and got some ideas, and I'm sure they'll come up with some great ideas coming forward, and we should expect some more focused communication going forward. But external communication is also important, as well as our internal communication. So EBED is a good example, but all our teaching partners, other NBOs, technology partners, etc., those communications are going to be important as well. So we have potential, we have challenges, our numbers are going down. We're challenged with money. We'd like to offer our services more cheaply, and we'd like to ensure that the future of bridge in this country is sustainable. Now, I think is an appropriate time to have a collaborative countrywide drive to build up the numbers of players in this country. I hope you agree with me. So lastly, again, I thank my colleagues for helping putting this together, and I'd welcome any feedback either now or any point that you would like to do so. So is there anything that we'd like to pick up on now, discuss further?
Can I suggest that we stop this now, then we'll have a quick hello with EBED, then Ron Millett can say his bit, and then we'll have a break after that, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion about what we've been talking about, if that's what the meeting wants, and then we'll move on to the last item on the agenda. So if we can do it in that order. Right, Andy, Margaret, say something so we can all see you.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Afternoon, ladies and gents. Everyone see me okay? Okay, so a quick update from EBED. As I promised Ian, we keep this fairly short because I know you guys have got a pretty packed agenda today. So what I wanted to do is give you a quick summary of what's changed since our last update at the EBU AGM. And frankly, we've been quietly getting on with things in the background and getting ready for preparing for the end of the restrictions we've all been living under for a while. In doing that, I'd like to pick up on a number of the points that have been mentioned already about teacher training and encouraging kids and how we can do more with online learning, because there's a number of things that we're actually actively working on there that I can tell you about. The reality is, however, that not that many teachers have embraced online teaching, and consequently a number of our material sales are substantially down on where we'd hoped to be, and I will touch later on a little bit in terms of our financial position. What we want is more teachers, but more importantly, more good teachers. And I'd like to echo really what Tim Warren was saying and what Kay was alluding to in her report, that good teachers are frankly worth their weight in gold. So we've been trying to tweak our offering of teacher training to incentivize good teachers to get additional help to progress and develop their role. So rather than just treating the club teacher training as a sort of sausage machine, if you like, we've introduced a number of measures to try and provide additional mentoring for teachers. So rather than just putting them through the training and saying, right, you're a bridge teacher, off you go, they've actually got some support to help them develop and get started. And we've also offered some incentives for how they can progress through the ranks of the EBED teacher training progression. All of those are really aimed at producing better teachers, not just more teachers. So I think whilst there's a general cry for more bridge teachers, it's important we focus on the fact that really good teachers will teach a substantial number of new students for you. Not that many teachers will become really good teachers, and so we want to try and help them focus on developing the good ones. So we've introduced a number of things there through our mentoring program. We've continued to run teacher training courses online throughout 2021, and we've actually already run 3 online versions of the club teacher training course this year so far. And you'll be pleased to know we are about to announce the dates for face-to-face teacher training, because I think, as Myra put in the tap-in commentary there, a number of teachers have not embraced online and are just waiting before going back to teaching for face-to-face to take off again. So that's what we've been doing on the EBTA side and on the teacher training side. There have been a couple of comments about RealBridge. We did a series of presentations on RealBridge. RealBridge do quite a lot of training off their own back, as I'm sure you're aware. But we actually did a seminar, some training seminars for how to get the most out of RealBridge, both for EBU clubs and separately with a slightly different focus for teachers. To pick up on exactly the point that somebody mentioned earlier on, that RealBridge is actually a great platform to help with teacher training. And in particular, it can be used very successfully for supervised play and gentle duplicate type situations online. And in fact, my local club does that very successfully. Kiat mentioned as well that there is already a series of products that we have developed for enabling teachers to teach online, and that's through our EBS product. Now, I know David Guild and Ron are going to talk more about the Yorkshire trial that we've been helping with and how that's progressing. But the EBS product is a ready-made set of lessons that can be delivered over an online video system, and there is an extensive bank of hands and examples that you can simply program into something like RealBridge. So those hands are already there. If you want to use RealBridge as your mechanic for the play element of teaching, that's already there, and EBED already has that. So if any teacher is not certain of how to use that, then please get in touch with Giorgio and they'll guide you through it. In terms of EBS, we also brand our online supervised play sessions that we've been running for a while now under the EBS label. Those are not really designed to stop to compete with bridge clubs and bridge teachers. We started them simply because many clubs had stopped playing, and we wanted to offer learners the ability to attend a supervised play session online. So we've been running that very successfully now for about 6 months or so, and Jax Morecambe has been leading them. They run as supervised play sessions. Teachers can bring along their own pupils if they like. That's no problem for us. And we hold a seminar at the end of the session to go through the hands. So that's been built up over the course of the last few months, and we've got as high as about 20 tables running 2 sessions a week there, which we're quite pleased with. It has fallen back, as I'm sure all of you have noted earlier on, in line with the unlocking has seen table numbers fall back a little bit. We've expanded that to also offer a gentle duplicate version of it. And we've done that as an affiliated club. So when people play in those sessions, A, the EBU is getting some money out of it, and B, the players are getting used to what an NGS grade is and those good things. And we've actually signed up over 500 new players to the EBU membership as a result of running those sessions. So we're finding a huge numbers of people who are coming to those sessions were not known to the EBU. We've done a further refinement to that. We're about to trial, I think June the 3rd is our first date. We're going to try running a seminar at the end of aimed at the same audience effectively, and the first one of those is a session about all about doubles. That is aimed again not to compete with teachers but to offer something slightly different. So this is outside of the normal red book, green book type scenarios that you'll be familiar with if you're a teacher. These are aimed at being complementary to that and the revenue generation opportunity for ourselves as well, which is important right now given what's happened to our finances over the last year. There's been much talk about the need to attract more bridge players into bridge clubs, and we absolutely get that. And Kay's presentation highlighted the role of both the EBU, the counties and the clubs in that. EBED has a big part to play in that too, and we've been developing some material to help clubs attract social bridge players and turn them into duplicate bridge players. And Giorgio's been working on that, and I suspect talking to Gordon about how we might involve the EBU in our efforts to help clubs there. So more of that hopefully fairly soon. On TD training, we've started two things there. Firstly, the program has now been published for face-to-face TD training for the second half of the year. And we've also started doing some online refresher training, really aimed at helping club directors get back into the swing of things, because whilst they've not had to cope with leads out of turn for a while, they've forgotten about many of the things that happen in the real world. So the first of those is actually taking place today. It was completely fully booked and waitlisted, and we're going to be putting on a series of those to satisfy what demand comes from clubs in that respect. We talked a little bit about youth earlier on, and two things that were mentioned I'd like to pick up on there. Firstly, we've been doing what we can to keep Youth Bridge going. We were absolutely determined that we would run the Schools Cup this year, even though we had to cancel it in earlier times. And that did take place this year, and we attracted over 20 tables, thanks in part to Giorgio's efforts at incentivising schools to come along and play. And that was a record attendance actually for the Schools Cup, and higher than the previous few years in terms of total number of players. So well done to Giorgio for promoting that. We get that the way bridge is taught to kids in schools is not the most exciting historically in comparison with some of the electronic games that they've got available to them now. So we're looking at a new way of teaching bridge to school kids. Giorgio is working on that together with the manufacturer of playing cards company, who are generous sponsors to our efforts in the Youth Bridge area. So the aim of the product is basically to make it a discovery exercise for children rather than them being talked at before they can actually get their hands on the cards and play. And the emphasis will be much more learning whilst playing as opposed to being taught how to play bridge and sitting there and listening to teacher. So we're actively working on that. There's also a call for sort of a greater degree of national coordination over youth. One of the areas which was sadly a casualty in some of the cuts that we had to make was we had to let our youth officer go. But I'm delighted to say that Joan Bennett, who many of you will know certainly from Oxfordshire and the surrounding areas, who has been a real force in Youth Bridge efforts over the years, is acting as a volunteer for us on a one-day-a-week basis with a specific brief to act as a national youth coordinator. So don't think we've forgotten about Youth Bridge. We most certainly haven't. Joan is now in place and doing good things, and we're actively working on this new product, as I say, to try and revitalise teaching Youth Bridge in schools. And also in a way that doesn't depend quite so much on elderly volunteers going to schools, because that may still be a problem for some time to come. Finances. Our finances are not in great shape in comparison to where we were before the pandemic, because we're quite dependent on two or three things, all of which have suffered greatly. Material sales, as I mentioned, are down, and it's not been possible for us to run as many face-to-face courses as we had in the past. And the EBU grant obviously was cut as the EBU was facing the pandemic as well. So in terms of our financial year, just to give you a comparison, we normally aim to broadly break even as a target. In the last financial year, we actually lost around about £100,000. But we still have reserves of about twice that going forwards. So through making some cost savings and redundancies, we've been able to position it, hopefully, that we will still be able to keep doing what we do for the future. I have to say, we don't have a very large team at EBED, so people sometimes make the mistake of thinking we're an enormous organisation. We actually have twice as many volunteers as trustees as we do full-time equivalent staff at the moment. So we only have actually 3 full-time equivalent staff. We have about 5 or 6 people working for us, but many of them work part-time. So we're doing what we can on the resources that we have, and we're going to keep doing that for the benefit of all going forwards. So the last thing I'd like to say is just to introduce you to Lee Guy. Lee is going to be my successor as chairman. My term comes to the end over the course of the summer, and we went through an extensive recruitment campaign to find Lee, and Ian and Gillian, I think, are both on the call, were very much part of that process. And if Lee is in the audience, I think I saw him earlier on, I'd like to hand over to him just to say a couple of quick words of introduction, and then straight back to you, Ian, to carry on with the meeting.
Thank you, Andy.
Yes, I'm here. I don't know if the process works. I can see Ian, but Ian, can you see me?
I can see you.
Excellent. Well, then I'll just crack on then. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank Andy, who's been incredibly helpful on the transitioning all the great work he's been doing with Giorgio over to me. Our first meeting, he handed me an agenda with 26 items. So I'm thanking him obviously seriously for that agenda. Anyway, I refer to myself as a born-again bridge player. I'm born again. I guess like a lot of people, I spent a few years in my teenage years playing in clubs, actually. I used to play precision club system all the way back then. I stopped playing for 35 years and then started again playing with my father, who is a member, as am I now, of Folkestone Bridge Club. So playing online. So I've still experienced the barbell of learning in the physics lab as a teenager and being online. I don't think I've actually played in many clubs, interesting enough. Anyway, I wish I was a better bridge player than I am, but that doesn't actually bother me because I just love the game of bridge. It's just fantastic fun, and I always wish that I could do a better job explaining to people how great it is. And I do find it incredibly annoying when they say how much they like chess in comparison to bridge. So maybe our responsibility to convince them that, at least I think, bridge is a better game than chess. Bit of my background, I'm a pure mathematician by education. I studied a number of interesting courses. One was chaos and the other was catastrophe theory. And this is my attempt at a joke here, which is how my father describes my bidding normally, as a catastrophe. I then spent 35 years in investment banking. I still work part-time, 3 days a week, doing that. I did trading, lending, risk management. I've worked at 3 firms, Barclays, Dresdner, which was a big German bank that got consumed by a German insurer, and Morgan Stanley, where I currently work. It is disappointing to say that the American bank is the best. I hoped it was Barclays, but it's not. Anyway, so as part of this process, why did Andy think that, and Ian and Gillian think that I might be a good candidate? What skills do I bring? So I spent the last 35 years building things, fixing things, changing things, and I would say pretty successfully. So I'm hoping I'm going to bring my love of bridge and my change management skills and my building business skills to leverage off all the work done so far, and hopefully help the rest of the EBU bring more people back and into playing bridge. One last thing, I'm known for my backgrounds. This is my leap of faith background on my Zoom, for those who can see it. And there are many different ones. Anyway, that's it from me. Nice to meet everybody virtually.
Okay, thank you very much, Lee. I didn't really intend to subject either Andy or Lee or Giorgio to any questions, but if anybody's got anything that can be dealt with quickly, just say so through chat. Otherwise, we'll let them go and we'll move on with our membership discussion. No? Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. You're welcome to stay. Quite understand if you don't.
Thank you, folks. Cheers.
Right. Okay, back to membership. As Kay said, Ron Millett, my colleague of many years standing, would now like to take the floor. So I'll ask him to do that. Then after that, we'll have it'll be gone 2:30, so we'll have a natural break for about 10 minutes and then start up again. Okay, Ron, off you go, wherever you are.
Thank you, Ian. First of all, I want to say I thought Kay's presentation, pulling together the strands in the survey and the various things we've thought about on membership development was excellent. It's a good basis. It's got the building blocks that describe the bridge landscape. Our task is now how we can improve the view of it. And there'll be a lot of suggestions coming forward from various people. What I'm concerned about, and these are some of my own thoughts as well, is if we're going to carry out a countrywide campaign, how we actually convert those ideas into practical action. So if you're looking for buzzwords, I'm considering facilitation and activation. So under facilitation, I think, and we've considered it, we need a series of regional development officers who have local and regional knowledge in the area that they serve. So they can communicate from Aylesbury to the clubs and counties and back from the counties and clubs to us. It's a route of communication and a route of action. They should be part-time and paid, supporting and assisting counties that wish to develop membership. And their operation will be based on an updated version of the original Yorkshire Regional Development Officer. But now as then, just in case Jerry gets a bit under the collar, their costs should be at the very least covered by the additional session receipts generated by new players. And I think we ought to think about that. Secondly, each county will have received a monthly analysis of session and member activity in their area. This will demonstrate where there are failing clubs and where there are successful ones. And we should encourage counties to target these failing ones and assess whether it's worth putting the effort in to support and develop them with a local membership campaign. This information is going to be sent out every 3 months to keep counties updated, and it should be a database from which to work. Another one that concerns me is that many organisations, commercial as well as not-for-profit, use telephone banks to contact people and support them. And Kay referred to that. It's a method of making local contact, but also giving moral support. And it would be another communication route for the EBU and the counties to talk to each other. An additional benefit would be to reinvigorate key people in clubs, especially as we come out of the COVID crisis. I see this as primarily a volunteer structure rather than being staffed only by Aylesbury. Another thing we need to think about, and again, it's a communication matter, but a bit more than that, is what I would call a labour exchange for teachers. Its function will be to link up affiliated clubs with teachers where they're looking for one and match teachers with clubs when they're searching for students to teach. Obviously, we'd have to work very closely with EBED on that. And I envisage that there'd be a fair amount of cooperation required. There's finally, if I can make a point in this little section, we tend to be a little bit coy when we take on students. I think it's very important that one of the first things we do is actually join them up to a club as members. There are an awful lot of clubs that I don't charge, they teach, they carry on, and they hesitate to ask them to come in and actually become a member. I'd really encourage counties to get their clubs to join up students at lesson 2 or slightly after, as I did when I learned, if I can remember that far back, many years ago. And we come to activation. I think we've lost much of the impetus for membership because of COVID and its lockdowns. There's not just been a physical effect, but a debilitating psychological one as well. To be fair, this area was somewhat patchy and piecemeal before COVID struck. We've also gained some new members because of the unique internet platform supported from Aylesbury, largely thanks to Gordon Rainsford and Jonathan Lillycrop. And I don't think we should underestimate the work they did, and in fact, the knock-on effect of gaining new members. It remains to be seen if those gains match the loss of members who have not played at all since COVID hit and may not play duplicate again. Our challenge is, how do we activate the game beyond our current members? Here are 3 brief suggestions. Then they all, to some extent, rely on our enforced use of the internet. We need new varieties of bridge that allow less skilled players to become involved in play more quickly. I believe we need an organised effort for the 14,000 to 16,000 members who never or rarely play, but remain on our books. They constitute about 30% of our membership. Then there are new forms of teaching that have developed because of our experience under COVID. The Yorkshire experience, as I call it, is only one, and I am aware of others taking part in the country. If I can talk finally very briefly about the Yorkshire Recruitment and Teaching Initiative, you will have received the detailed notes on the Yorkshire Recruitment version written by David Gill. I won't go into the detail here, except to say that it arose from the realisation that very little membership development had taken place since March 20. This project was designed to rebuild affiliated clubs post-COVID. The structure consists of 10 lessons, each lasting 45 minutes, presented on a Zoom platform. Each one was followed up by supervised play using prepared hands relevant to the presentation. All students were routed through a particular club they had joined or contacted, and that club ran the supervised play for that group of students. The numbers taking part were well above 300 initially, and by the end of the course, they were steady at about 220. The programme was conceived by David Gill and was unique because there were 4 active different partners working together. They were, first of all, EBED, who supplied the materials and lesson structure in its initial form. Jim Edwards, working from Bridge Play UK, who created a supervised play platform and gave training in its use. The individual clubs involved, their commitment to the campaign made the practice play sessions after each lecture a success. They also provided most of the lecturers for the Zoom presentations. The YCBA, particularly David Gill, Leslie Millett and Nick Wolven, created and developed the concept, financed it from their own resources, the counties that is, and then mentored it and pushed it forward. The key is, because all parties had a direct commitment to some of the burden, it was shared. The initiative developed a momentum of its own, not just for the organisers, but for the students as well. The organisers and coordination between the 4 different groups, especially the clubs, clearly ran well. This also added to the enthusiasm and continuing involvement of the students. So what you had was a sort of camaraderie, although it's a bit difficult on an internet base, over everybody involved. There was no remoteness, and many of the students made contact with each other and started playing, however poorly, among themselves, and then came back to further lessons. They've completed the first set of 10 lessons and they're now on the second set. David Gill's here amongst us, and I think he can answer any questions you may have in far greater detail and more effective than I can. But I would recommend very strongly that counties consider running something like this or something similar. And David said he's very happy to give assistance and support on the same basis as the Zoom presenters who were involved in the programme. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I'm sure David will accept it. No, I suggest we don't get into a load of questions and answers about detail now. If you're interested in this, rolling out this scheme in your county or getting together with another county, if you don't think you've got the resources on your own, but maybe coupled with an adjacent county, you can do something. If you get in touch with David, we'll send you his.
Can I just say a quick word, Ian? Just a quick word, and that is that I think the reason for success of this is that all stakeholders it was explained to them and they bought into it. Too often we actually do solutions such as national campaigns, regional campaigns, and we don't get the buy-in of everybody. And in this case, everybody, it was explained to them and everybody saw benefit. Also, the actual traditional model was torn up. I was listening to Dominic Cummings this morning and it was absolutely riveting about closed group decisions being made wrongly. And actually being tied to traditional models is actually one of the problems that EBU has. And this was a completely different approach and did not require the number of teachers that we would do on a club by club basis. It changed the structure so that we have more helpers. But I'll let you read the report. I won't say any more.
Okay, thanks very much, David. All right, well, I make it just coming up to 20 to 3. So perhaps if we reconvene at 10 to, if you just mute yourselves before you go off. Ian Sidgwick has just asked if there's a project pack from Yorkshire. Good question, and I'm sure that will be answered in due course. Thank you. All right, well, we were going to start off with a discussion about membership, so we'll sort of throw that open for a few minutes and people can join in and as and when they arrive, if they want to. Someone has asked, and I'm sure others are thinking the same, we'll be sending out the slides for both the survey response and the membership group planning. So if you've received your agenda and your Zoom link via email, then you will get those as well. They'll be sent out sometime in the next day or two. Right. Would anybody like to say something on membership? If you alert me using the chat function, please. Eagerly awaiting something. Yeah. Ian Sidgwick of Gloucestershire was waving. Is that the same as using the chat? Are you really waving? Yes. Right. Okay. Well. Okay. Ian Sidgwick, then Norman Innes, please.
I want to say a couple of things. I mean, firstly, the Yorkshire experience sounds really brilliant to me. I mean, I'd very much like to learn more about that and about implementing it in Gloucestershire. We said we've got a shortage of teachers. Well, they need very few teachers with the methodology that they're using. It doesn't sound like it costs much money either. So then I'm interested to know about the tutorial role in the clubs when the students go to the clubs after the online lectures and what the requirements are for that particular role.
Can I answer
that? That is a great way of us increasing our membership and a number of bridge players. It sounds really encouraging.
The actual cost was
can I just say, from a treasurer's point of view, the costs were not massive. We supported people playing on the Bridge Play UK platform, and the clubs have participated in all their practice play. But I think in the second round, correct me if I'm wrong, David, we have charged something, whereas the first session was free of 10 lessons.
Okay. The restraints are very little to get going, it sounds, which is very encouraging.
there were no marketing costs because all we did is just created digital posters, and once we got a format for that, we could actually knock them out in 20 minutes.
Yeah. And you actually
so
had
there's no cost there.
waiting lists. It's so successful. I mean, it's wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's once the word got I think the fact it was 10 free lessons at a time when people were scratching around for something to do helped.
Yeah.
But I was amazed at how many stuck to it. We had very, very little attrition.
Good. Well, the other thing I wanted to mention was about restarts, because it's getting new members is one thing, but retaining the older members, or existing members, should I say, maybe older, is other thing. And what support are we giving to clubs by way of information to get restarted? I was talking to one yesterday, and they're hesitant. They're not sure. They've got committee meetings coming up. But I know there's information out there. There's quite a lot on our EBU website, and the government's got stuff. But I don't think information being out there, if people go searching for it, is the most efficient way of getting information to people. Is there a sort of information pack that can go out to all the clubs, collating what is available, so it's actually presented to them in front of them, and they've got it ready for their various committee meetings?
Who'd like to answer?
Who am I asking that? Gordon, maybe? I don't know.
No, perhaps Kath. Perhaps you'd like to answer. Kath Fox. Perhaps you'd like to answer that, if you're there. Didn't actually check.
Hello. Yeah, I'm here. What we're in the middle of doing is creating toolkits based around things like the Yorkshire Initiative to send out to clubs. So that's what we're hoping to do, is to make completely simplified toolkits that we can send out to counties and clubs to do exactly what you have just suggested, that can then be used in the committees. And everything we're thinking of doing is all about being able to reuse and share. So if something good is happening in Yorkshire, then we can turn that into a toolkit, and then we can use and share that with the other clubs. And if we find something that's very good somewhere else, then we can turn that into a toolkit and use and share that with other clubs.
So there's a toolkit for the recruitment and teaching, and a toolkit for restarting?
Yeah, there's toolkit for recruitment and teaching. There could be a toolkit for restarting. There'll be a toolkit for things like working with partnership organisations, like bowling clubs, golf clubs,
When will it
etc.
be available? Because the restarting one is like imminent, isn't it? The two clubs I spoke to yesterday, they got their committee meetings within the next 1 to 3 weeks. So they really need that information very urgently. It's probably the top priority right now.
The restarting one isn't with us at the moment. The restarting one has a priority all of its own. So we need to refer it to somebody in the restart.
Yeah, that's a slightly different emphasis, I think. So
it's very immediate.
Yeah, but we'll be coming to that a bit later.
Okay.
If you look at your agenda.
Yeah.
But Kath's quite right. They're working on putting together stuff for you to use in an ongoing basis here. We talked the other day about sort of almost templates for newspaper articles, if you can get your local newspaper to take them. All sorts of stuff that everybody can use is put together sort of by
That's great.
Everybody.
What sort of timescale is it for the recruitment and teaching, the Yorkshire model, to have that toolkit?
At the moment, what Gail's doing is we're doing an audit of everything that we've got at the moment, and then we're putting in. But I wouldn't have thought it was that long for the Yorkshire one, because we've got all the information for that. So maybe.
Well, presumably Yorkshire can provide it, can't they?
Yeah.
And you just pass it on.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
The answer is yes.
Good. Excellent. Right. So is that ready? Is that off the peg, Leslie?
It's not off the peg, no, but the structure is there. we would need to work on it, and obviously it won't take, I wouldn't have thought it would take forever, because of the fact that we've had, you know, a lot of participation from the clubs and they've fed everything in. So we are getting to the stage where it's not far away. But I will reinforce what I keep saying, and I think David Guild is with me here. Teaching bridge online is far different from teaching face to face. And I think the structure that we have taken on board, which is really the tutorial lecture way that it is at universities, has proven to be successful. And that wouldn't be the same face to face.
Okay, thanks. Norman.
Can I just say, Ian, to be completely honest, they're both too modest to say, but particularly David, but also Leslie, there's a lot of backroom administration required to make it work.
Okay, well, that's fine, but share this, please. You're being asked to share it.
Okay, shall I come in? The only reason there's a lot of backroom administration is because we didn't do it direct to the clubs. We're doing it to individual members. So we have to collect all the emails and for each individual member so that we can actually send information to them and also send information to EBED. If we didn't have that EBED link, which is there because it's a registration on EBS so that the EBS is paid after 3 months, because they charge £5 a month, we would actually do it at club level, and it would be the clubs would manage all that. They would only manage their own students, and there would be no central administration.
Okay. All right. Well, we look forward to seeing the fruits of that.
Ian,
okay,
could I just come in on the restart situation? I am part of the restart group, which meets every few weeks, and we have a meeting scheduled for the 15th of June, which is the day after the hopeful announcements on the 14th of June as to what is going to be happening. And I think at that time, the plan was that the website would be updated. But if it's felt that it has to be a communication through to all clubs, all counties, then I'm sure we can talk to Sam and get something out like that. But until that meeting happens on the 14th of June, what advice can we give people on restart? Because the view is
no more than anyone else. Okay, thanks, Gail. Now I want to move on from this because we've still got another whole topic to come. But Norman Innes did sort of have his figurative hand up on the subject of education. So Norman, just a quick one from you, please.
Again, sorry, me. Yeah, I'm sort of slightly uneasy about what I've sort of identified, and maybe I'm wrong, about we're all going to move back to face to face. If one thing has told us this year is the whole country has embraced doing stuff online.
No, I don't think anybody thinks that, Norman.
No, but no, I'm not saying totally, but the thinking. I mean, just for an example, talking about teachers' courses, and we've got our first face-to-face soon. When I did my teaching course, it was an hour and a half drive each way, and it was 175 quid, and it was an entire weekend. I mean, how attractive is that to somebody? Or if I could do a day's online.
There's got to be a hybrid. People have got to adapt. Yeah. There have to be two prongs to the fork.
Yeah.
I don't think
can I just echo everybody else? I love the Yorkshire thing, and that's something you're going to really have a strong look at in Kent, because I think it's the way forward.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Right. Okay. Thank you. Time moves on. Let's move on to talking about what we will broadly call tournaments. So you've had some papers along with the agenda, but just to put them in some sort of context and put some flesh on the bones, perhaps, I'd like to introduce you to another long-standing board member who has thrown himself into this with a will. Everybody's hard at it these days. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, if he's here, Mr. Rob Loy. Rob, say hello. Say something.
Hello, I'm here. I assume you can all hear me.
Yeah.
Actually, I spent part of the the 10-minute break musing about what I'd heard, and I thought there were two messages that came through to me. One was general, and the general message is that things really have changed, and that now, in order to survive, we need to be collaborative. That word seemed to resonate through every presentation, and I think it's something we need to take forward, and it's something that's part of what I'm going to say today. The second thing is being more specific, and it's about the work that we've undertaken in our group, and it's been heartening actually to hear and to see that many of the issues that are raised in this part of the agenda that I'm going to talk about have already been raised in other parts of the agenda. So actually we are on the same page as a board, which is great. I did actually know that, but also other board members have raised the same issues that I'm going to raise. Okay, so this part of the agenda, this agenda item is shared between me and Gordon. In the first part, I will describe the background and rationale of the work being undertaken by the new Competitions and Strategy Subcommittee. What I'll do then is hand over to Gordon, who will describe our restart plans, or the restart plans, and the competition programme for the period up to the end of 2021. Okay, the subcommittee was established in January this year. The group is chaired by me and comprises Gordon Rainsford, Kay Preddy, Patrick Shields and Gail Webb. You will know all of these people. The only one who hasn't been introduced, I think, is Patrick, but you will all know him. Thus far, we've met as a group maybe 10 times. Since January, we have at various times also consulted with a number of individuals and groups outside of the committee. Some of you have been involved in those discussions, hence collaborative. Our expectation is that the work being undertaken by the subcommittee will continue into next year and beyond. Indeed, we see the development of our competition strategy as an iterative and evolving process, rather than one that will be set in stone. We will most definitely continue to consult with you throughout. This is our second chairs meeting online. I mean, it hardly seems like yesterday that I was sitting here in a different capacity talking to you about some aspect of education strategy. How things have changed. Who could have predicted that this would be the case 2 years ago? Lockdown and the implications arising from this have transformed our game. No face-to-face bridge, no UMS, no income. That was our first priority. As our income tumbled, we addressed the immediate problems that this posed. We furloughed staff, cut our costs, and established an important online presence to draw in much needed revenue. We dealt with the here and now, and thankfully, and this has been echoed again throughout this meeting, and with your support, we have moved out of what I'm calling the red zone. It's good to see a smile on Jerry's face, actually. Having survived the early months of lockdown, it became clear that we needed to take a deep breath and undertake a strategic review of our activities. We needed a plan, not just to take us through the next few months, but rather a plan with a direction of travel to carry us through the next few years. Our competitions, congresses and tournaments, whether orchestrated and managed by the EBU or by county associations or clubs, are the lifeblood of the organisation. So I went back to the Memorandum of Association, and this document is unequivocal about how we should act. It states that the role of the EBU is to elevate and maintain the status and procure the advancement of the game of bridge in England. The idea that the EBU should provide an appropriate environment for clubs, counties and different cohorts and groups of people to thrive has been central to our thinking. After all, the EBU is owned by its members. Its strength and resilience comes from working together for the benefit of all. Having said this, we are conscious that even without the impact of lockdown, things were changing, particularly in terms of demographics, and it would have been necessary to take a look at what appears to be a crowded competitions programme. There is no easy fix for managing the balance between face-to-face and online bridge. I've little doubt that we'll be struggling with this into the foreseeable future. These issues have been addressed in the background and rationale document and the competition strategy principles document, which you received with the meeting agenda. I really struggled with that last one, to say it without getting it kind of tongue-tied. What I'm about to share with you are just some of the issues and questions we're facing in our medium and long-term planning. I'll start with quite a contentious one, really. How cognizant should we be of our carbon footprint? Should we really be crisscrossing the country in our cars just to play bridge? If we take today, for example, it would seem, though I'm sure some of you might well disagree, that a face-to-face chairs meeting is not necessary for us to conduct our business effectively and efficiently. It's the same true for all or some face-to-face bridge. A nice poser. If we accept the logic of this argument, which national event should move online? The Tollymash qualifying, the Corwin and the Portland pairs would seem to be obvious candidates. Should the early rounds of Crockford's or the seniors knockout be online by default? I mean, some of these issues, and I think the last two, we're having to make a decision right now about what we're going to do in the forthcoming year, and it looks like we really have no choice but to allow them to be online by default, certainly for the upcoming year. How can the EBU best ensure equity and fairness in online play when counties and clubs alongside the EBU have extended the reach of their online games to a national audience? And of course, we can't ignore money issues, and more particularly the pricing of our competitions and games in a post-lockdown world. It's not rocket science. Online is relatively cheap to play and run, face-to-face more expensive all round. How can we best manage this? Can we afford to wait, or should we be proactive? It was interesting to hear Jerry say we're going to have to raise our prices, but the danger of raising our prices is that we price ourselves out of being a place where people want to play bridge. It's not easy. The decisions and things that we have to do are quite complex. Might we add value to our current portfolio of games and competitions with the aim of encouraging more take-up in bridge events? We have a number of ideas. We perhaps ought to support what appears to be an increased desire and opportunity for team play. The lockdown league comes to mind here, but also county and clubs games which are being locally organised. As a corollary of that, we might offer support for counties and clubs to organise team games with supported access through the EBU to Real Bridge. And it's something we've already spoken about. And here's one, we could integrate blue points more fully into the master points system by allowing them to have the same value as green points up to a certain level. This might incentivize these players to play more and achieve higher rankings. It's all about bums on seats, getting people to play bridge and bringing in the UMS money. We could do more to encourage clubs and counties to mark individual success in achieving master point goals. Small presentations in clubs as people achieve new goals, for example. People like that. And also more to encourage stronger players to mentor those in lower ranks. Some of this is happening through EBED and the English Bridge School, but there are more opportunities which we should not ignore. As we've heard, Yorkshire seem to be doing a lot of things right. Their approach isn't just focused on one particular aspect, but brings together many different elements, including high quality teaching materials and well-trained teachers to increase retention and allow the game to grow. It will be interesting to hear your views on these issues and perhaps others not mentioned here. But before we do that, I will hand on to Gordon, who will outline our intended competition and congress plans for the summer and beyond. Okay, thanks, Gordon.
Thank you very much, Rob. Yes, I'm going to talk a bit about the practicalities and the plans that we have. Rob's talked more about the background and the theory, and I'm going to talk first of all about what we're planning for the EBU national competitions, and that may well lead into what clubs will be wanting to do or some of the discussion we've had about clubs' plans. So what we decided for our competitions was that the first thing that we should run live is Eastbourne, the summer meeting. And that's because it's a big special event that lots of people look forward to. But it's also because it was a couple of months after the proposed loosening of lockdown, which meant that even if there's any delay, and we're still hopeful that there won't be a delay, that doesn't discount it from running. We're very lucky in that Eastbourne venue is owned by the local council, and they're keen to have us there, and that means that they're very flexible in terms of only charging us for what we use. If for any terrible reason it was cancelled, we wouldn't have to pay them, and if we use a smaller amount of space, then that's all we'll be charged for. If we need more space because lots of people are coming, then they have it available. So for all those reasons, Eastbourne felt like a good first thing to run, and hopefully for it to seem like an exciting return to face-to-face bridge. So that's our plan. And I know that a number of clubs have looked at that and said, does that mean we should wait until August before we do anything? Well, no, it doesn't. These are the reasons we've chosen it. It doesn't mean that everyone else has to do the same thing. It doesn't mean there's any magical thing about August. It simply was where it fitted into the calendar and how it seemed to fit with a good start to face-to-face bridge again. The plan after that is that for the rest of the year, everything will be face-to-face in terms of the national competitions, congresses that we run, with the exception of the Tollemache qualifier. The Tollemache qualifier is a very large event, county event. It ran successfully online last year. Because of its size, it's quite difficult getting a venue for it. And it seemed that for those reasons, it would be good to continue to run that online this year. There are many events that run extremely well online, and they tend to be the ones where there's an awful lot of boards needed. There's a lot of barometer type scoring, which the Tollemache is. And also any county event runs very well online from the point of view of making it a level playing field for people to attend from the far distant corners of the country. So you can have Cornwall and the Northeast playing as easily as those counties that are more central. So Tollemache will be online for the qualifier, but the final, because we also know that people still want to meet, and part of the joy of these inter-county events is getting to see people and have a drink with them. So the final will be live next year. The one other thing where there's a difference during this year is the year-end congresses. We are running the year-end congress in London as usual, or as in the past, but there won't be a Northern year-end congress, Blackpool year-end congress. This has been in decline for quite a number of years, an awful lot of problems trying to rejuvenate it. So what we're going to do instead is that run alongside the year-end congress in London, some aspects of it will be what has become termed hybrid events. So for example, the mixed pairs and the open pairs, where you have different sections playing, there will be an online section so that people from all over the country, people who are nowhere near London, can join in and play, and they will be part of the same event. Unfortunately, doing this kind of hybrid thing works only for the kind of events that can be run in sections. It doesn't work for Swiss, because Swiss means that people need to have the opportunity of being drawn against anyone else in the field, and that doesn't happen. But if there's a demand for it, we could, of course, run a separate online Swiss event that is to cater to people who are outside London. We can see about that a little bit closer to the time. The events, I've mentioned county events, and we do have some other county events before the restart of Eastbourne. We've got the Pachabo and the Corwin, and I've already mentioned some reasons why they should be running successfully online. So they will be online then next month, and we'll see how they go and what the feedback is. We're going to be asking people particularly their feedback about having these kind of events online, so that we can see what we do going forward. My expectation is that we will run some of them online, but not all of them online. As I've mentioned, the social aspect of county events is quite important for a lot of people, but at the same time, the administrative and financial advantages of running them online can't be discounted. So I've mentioned that some clubs have asked about whether they need to wait till August before they reopen. We're always extremely careful not to tread on clubs' toes. We know that clubs guard their independence carefully, and we understand that. So we don't tell clubs what they can do. What we do try to do is provide them with some information. And I put a couple of links into the chat of this meeting so that you can have a look at some of the information that we've got up on the website. The stuff at the top is the more recent things, and if you work backwards, you'll see that we've provided quite a lot at various times. But it is really going to be up to clubs to decide for themselves. One of the things is that many clubs run in premises owned by other people, and for them, they need to have some kind of a dialogue with their landlords, whether they're the council or a school or whatever. The people who own the building may well have requirements before they allow things to restart. So that sort of discussion will have to go on there. But for those clubs who can make their own decisions, we hope that what we've provided will give them some ideas. And I've also put in the chat a link to our forums where there's a bit of discussion. There's plenty of opportunity to have a lot more discussion if people want to. And I have noticed that in the last week or two, we've had a lot more people signing up to be able to post there. So I think they're probably preparing for a discussion among clubs. So that's our expectation with clubs, that they will make their own decisions. We want to try to help them. I know our club liaison officer, Jonathan Lillycrop, is available to give people ideas and help with various things. We know that some clubs will be looking at hybrid events of their own. If they're a large club, they might be running two sections, one in the club and one played online and combining the results. Some others may run one live event each week or one online because they've discovered that their members quite like them. Awful lot of possibilities there. So I hope I may have stimulated some thought about what to do there, and if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. There's one thing I've just noticed that was asked earlier and I don't think was ever quite addressed, which was Paul Littlewood asked about whether there should be more county green-pointed county assigned weekends. And one of the things we have been aware of for quite a long time is that the calendar is really terribly full. So the fact that counties like the green pointed events, that's always been the case. They've always been profitable for counties before they were online. And the reason they've been restricted has simply been because the calendar is so congested. If anything, we would like to be able to reduce the pressure on the calendar a little bit. And that has also brought its own issues with the fact that people can now play in a county event without travelling to it. So I can play in a Northeast county event one day and then play in a Dorset event the next day because I don't have to travel to them. So that's also brought its own challenges as well. So I don't know if anyone's got any other questions. I'll have a quick look and see. Nothing in the chat box. But
can I just interject, because you said something fairly quickly. And I just want to clarify it because I don't want people getting the wrong idea. I think what you said was perfectly clear, but it may not have come across to others as that.
Sure.
When you said that the decision as to whether events were going to be held online or in person in future, you said quite correctly, financial considerations cannot be discounted. I'd like to assure everybody that that means exactly what it says. It doesn't mean that all decisions will be entirely finance driven. It will be one of the factors that's taken into consideration. We're not about to go around making swinging cuts just because we can. So just thought I'd reassure you on that.
Absolutely.
You disappoint me, and you're losing the financial grip.
I am, you see. Your screen was turned off, so I couldn't see your face. So I felt safe in saying that.
Let me say that's absolutely right. Financial considerations are only one consideration.
It might be worth stating that in one sense, financial considerations have only ever been one consideration in terms of our competitions. We don't price them based on the costs, and we don't price them to try to make us the same surplus from all events. We try to smooth these things out. So there are some regional variations in that London events have tended to be charged at a slightly higher rate. But by and large, the entire program as a whole is budgeted together rather than having lots of variation in entry prices.
Yeah, indeed.
Gordon, could I ask a question about the competition strategy? And in particular, it's something which, in fact, Manchester's attempting to grapple with as well. Item E says the EBU will encourage the playing of knockout matches online.
Yeah.
When you have a knockout competition, there is a big difference then in what the default will be. I.e., would it be if either team wanted to play online, they'd had to played online, or would it be that if either team wanted to play face-to-face, they'd had to be played face-to-face? Or would you have something like, you know, if the away team is more than 100 miles away, then it can insist on playing online or something? Because all those are very different things.
They are, and it is one of the difficulties that we're currently trying to address. The things that have just started or are just about to start, what we are saying is that the default is online because that's how people have started, and because that for some people is the only thing that allows them to play in it, either because of health considerations or travel considerations. Some people have started playing in teams with people who are at other ends of the country. So although we know that people are very keen to get back to playing face-to-face, and we're happy to allow them to when they feel that they're able to within the regulations, if there is a problem for those events, we're saying it has to be online. However, events that are coming up in the next wave of knockouts, we will probably say something slightly different, but what we're expecting to do is to ask people when they put in their entry to indicate if they would be happy to play their early matches online. One of the great things about online for knockouts is that it means that you can play against people who are not nearby. We know that there are some counties where there are not a lot of people who play in these knockout events, and they complain that they play against the same team year after year after year. So for them, it would be great if they can say, we want to play, we're happy to play people far away in the early stages. And if we can get that kind of indication, then we can deliberately put people against people who are not nearby for the early stages, and then the later stages when they will be played face-to-face, unless people continue to choose to play them online. By that time, they will have got away from playing the same people that they're used to playing all the time. So I suppose that's not quite as precise an answer as you might have wanted, but it's that we're looking at it. We will have to find some kind of a balance, but right now the balance is that if people can't agree, then they play online.
That's helpful. Thank you, Gordon.
Okay. All right. Well,
sorry, Ian, could I just ask a question about this report? There's an aspect of it in it that's hasn't been mentioned and hasn't been spoken about, that's in the written report, which is competitions for lower ranked players. That this conversation here, as I think has been in counties over a period of time, is dominated by people like us who are cohort 3 that's mentioned in the report. And there hasn't been enough provision for people lower down the grading. So if you look at the NGS 9 events that Kent ran at the Easter Congress and will run at the Spring Bank Holiday Congress, and that we actually now hold online every weekend in Kent. There is a demand there for people to come and play a competitive bridge against people of their own standard, and that hasn't been, in my view, provided either by the EBU or the counties. If I go back to our Corwin qualifier, in the days before Norman was chairman, it was gradually dying. They couldn't get a 13 table final. They had heats in about 5 clubs. And now in the last year, when we changed that, and it was a big battle to get it changed through the county committee. I spent 2 years trying to do it. And the only reason they agreed in the end was because the EBU changed the rules about handing out green points for it. And because they couldn't get a gold point anymore in the final, unless they got more people playing in earliest county organised stages, they eventually got it through. But we couldn't get to a 13 table final. The last year when it was still face to face, we had over 110 pairs playing in the county organised semi-finals. And this year we had over 140 pairs playing in the county, more than 10% of the pre-COVID membership playing in our Corwin qualifier in the county organised stages. There is a bit, if we organise it properly, there is a demand, but there tends, I think, because it's people like us who are running and organising it, these people get left out. So I think there is part of what's in this report is that we need to see that there is a demand there and we can make a provision for that and be a stepping stone for players.
Well, funnily enough, Paul Littlewood has just asked, he said that in his county, which is only the other side of London from you, they've had no joy getting this together at all. So perhaps the two of you might talk at some point profitably. It is part of our strategy. It's part of the rolled up with the whole membership strategy. I think
it's part of the part of the competitions and education strategies as well. I mean, it's integral to what we're doing. We need to bring all the different aspects of what we're doing together into one holistic product. And you know, if we can get everybody to work together, we can draw people in. We can get the 9 players to play bridge, and we can add value to what they're doing by perhaps providing them with a post-game review of what they're doing to encourage them to play. It's a way of increasing the numbers, increasing the UMS, and getting people to play more. Sorry for interrupting you.
Oh yes, there's demand for the Kent strategy to be shared. But was it really a strategy? I mean, is it something you can bottle and sell or put on paper and give away, slightly more accurately?
Well, they did it for us actually as the EBU when we last were going to run a 9 High event, and they were also going to run one at the same time. So I asked Paul and Stephen Brown from Kent to do it for us. So they did, and it were hugely successful, far more successful than if we'd run it ourselves as an EBU event. So I don't know what the magic ingredient is, but they, apart from a lot of care and hard work, which they clearly put into it.
I think then that just goes into Gail, Kath and Kay's lists of things to send out to clubs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Clubs and counties. Right. Right. We'll take one more question. I do want to wrap up. There's a question about the lockdown league. I only saw the top half of it. That's Jeff Smith, I believe. Jeff?
Yeah, it has declined, but we fully expected it to. So we're not unhappy or surprised by it. The weather's about to get better. People are about to start being able to do other things. And they're also expecting to be able to play in clubs. So I'm not sure that there's anything there that we should worry about. There are 99 teams playing in it. Now, before the lockdown league ever started, when we first started it, it would never have occurred to us that we would get so many teams playing, and to still be playing after a year. I personally think there's not much case for changing the format, because I think the format is the reason it's been a success, which is that it's frequent short matches at a time of day that people can fit around other things, and they should still be able to do that, I imagine, going forward. If we do find that there is a further significant decline, then we may well look at it again. But the feedback we have is that they are fulfilling a need, and they're doing something in a different way to anything else that is on our calendar at the moment. So I think we'll be carrying on. We'll certainly be running this season like this and see how it goes then.
Yeah, always aware, of course, that every event has a shelf life. Nothing lasts forever. If it's working, we'll carry on, but at some point it'll stop working. Gail, do you want to speak? You could, Gail, if you want to speak, you can be our last contributor for the afternoon.
Well, I've really said it now, and what I put on there, having run several 9 highs in Wiltshire, advertised it, I thought it was a great idea, advertised it, and the entries weren't coming through. So I got on the phone and started ringing people and saying, this does mean you'll be suitable. And as soon as I started getting people to enter and the entries were showing up on the website that they'd entered, then others followed. But they're a bit nervous about putting their toe in to start with. And now, thanks to Patrick Shields and the Midlands Working Group, we're even doing the under 6 in a couple of weeks' time. And again, I'm ringing people, and if I ring them, they're happy to enter, but they don't like putting themselves forward.
Right, so you basically go around to their house and frog march them to the event.
Absolutely, you know what I'm like, Ian.
Yeah, quite right too. All right, well, I think we have to wind up. I'd like to thank everybody. First of all, thank you to all the county chairs and other representatives for turning up. I hope you've gained something from this. I'd like to thank the people who've put together the various presentations. An immense amount of work has gone into those. So thanks to all, really, that's very helpful. And I hope that there's some stuff there that we can act on and move forward, because we have to move forward, because the alternative to moving forward is not moving at all. And we don't want that. I hope to see many, if not most of you, in Eastbourne. It'll be the first face-to-face game for any of us for 18 months, I should imagine. Let's make it a good one. My putative partner is here as well. Turned off her screen and turned off her microphone, I think, because she didn't want to make some sort of adverse comment. Very kind of her. All right, thank you all, and a very good afternoon to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thanks all. Bye.
Gordon. Thank you.